Having said that, Ken, I'm ready to start.
You are good to go. We'll take a break at an hour and stop it and restart.
All right. This session will be broken up into two sessions. First one is titled there, Grant Management Seminar. The second one will be DACDB Online Participation. This hour, and it's roughly an hour, will concentrate on how to manage a district grant responsibly. What does the word stewardship mean? How many of you know what the initials MOU stand for? Formally, it's the Memorandum of Understanding. Eventually, I will get a chance to tell you that the Memorandum of Understanding is a legal document with signatures. Your club has to sign it in order to be eligible for a district grant, along with participating in this grant training and complying with DACDB. And there are a lot of financial responsibilities that will go and will become visible in the next hour. We'll talk more about what is proper financial control. The idea of technical standards technically is more appropriate in global grants and not so much in local grants. It could become an issue in some municipalities. If there are certain zoning laws and rules that a club would have to behave in, if it involves construction and things like that. So we're not totally free and clear, but the technical standards could become more legalistic. How does the word beneficiaries apply in a district grant? Well, 99.9% of the time, isn't it fair to say you're doing something for somebody else? And that somebody else may be a family, it may be another organization. That family or organization is the beneficiary of your good work. Eventually, I will show you and tell you that you need a letter of cooperation from that beneficiary, basically giving you the go-ahead, the permission to either be on their property or to help them fulfill their objectives. Rotary's getting better, and this, again, originally applied more in global grant settings. 30 years ago, Rotary was guilty of going, let's just use the continent of Africa as an example. And this is pretty accurate. We went to a community in Africa, decided they needed restroom facilities, latrine, whatever you want to call it, and went there and built our restroom facilities there. Well, nobody would use them because it wasn't their culture. The point is, we didn't ask them what they needed. We are getting better at that. And in a local basis, I want to just say it to you this way. Don't assume that you know what that other organization needs. Ask them. And figure out if it fits into a district grant setting for you. We'll talk more about safeguarding funds as we get deeper into this. If you have an idea for a district grant, have you talked it over with the beneficiaries? Do you understand the scope of the project? Will it meet the community needs, either of that organization or the community at large? Have you set up some kind of a communication system with that beneficiary partner? Do you have an implementation plan? Do you know that you're going to be able to have it finish by January of 2020 in this case? Are you going to get the timeline done right? Stewardship of funds. More about that a little later also. Rotarians will control the funds until we pay the bills out of your own club treasury. Financial records review, and I'll probably repeat this 2 or 3 times in the next 45 minutes. All of the financial records, all of the invoices, bills, paid bills, receipts that happened during the project have to be kept online, or well, 2 ways really. We talk about keeping them online on DAC TV, that's true. But Rotary, and this is something I can't control, Rotary requires that you keep a file folder in somebody's file cabinet for 5 years. Because Rotary retains the right to come down to me, they would start, and say, we would like to see all the records of the Carbondale Breakfast Grant from 2017-18. At that point, I would contact the Carbondale Breakfast Club and ask for records. Those records will also be in long-term storage on DAC TV. Hopefully the 2 systems match. Because if they don't, an auditor is going to have a field day. If you caught the body language in my face, you know exactly what I'm talking about as an auditor. Oversight of funds. Did you spend all the money that we gave you to spend, plus some of your own treasury money? Timely submission of reports. I've sent out emails recently that if you have a current grant in progress for the 18-19 year, final reports need to be in by the end of February. If you can't be done by the end of February, then I need an interim report for this year. And I need to add one thing to that interim report, a Microsoft Word document, maybe 2 paragraphs, that explains why you can't finish on time, and what are the next steps, and what's the timeline, and when will you be done, so you can file the final report. Because if I don't have that, one of Rotary's requirements is, if you have an outstanding project with no report, you're not eligible for another grant. That's true for the district grants as well as global grants. All right, qualification requirements. At least 2 of your club members must be grant certified. At least 2. We recommend 3 or 4, and I'll tell you why. It's happened once last year and once the year before that. 2 people came, 2 people are certified, one of them got a job in Ohio. Well, when you get a job in Ohio, you drop out of this Rotary Club. And when you're out of this Rotary Club, you're no longer eligible or grant certified. So now we have a club with only 1 grant certified person. And it takes 2 to sign off. So there's a value in having a 3rd party or a 4th. All right, you're here at the grant certification training today. You and this may be a whole series of people. Your current club president must sign the memorandum of understanding. Next year's club president must sign the memorandum of understanding. And all grants, if there are other grant certified people, that's the total list that will be signing the memorandum of understanding. I mentioned that it's a legal document. I'm going to carry that 2 more steps, I think. The memorandum of understanding that you'll be signing is a 3-page document. As a district representative, the memorandum of understanding that we sign for RI is a 5-page document, which literally translates into more technicalities, more legalities, and more children that you're signing off on. It's basically, if you screw up, you give up your first and second born child. And you'll never get a grant again, probably as long as you live. Rotary also requires that grant training and certification is a 1-year deal. It's not perpetual. So it's retrain or recertified every year. Third item on that list, conflicts of interest. What would constitute a conflict of interest? And I assume this would be a financial question. Well, and it may not be necessarily a conflict of interest, but a lot of us live in small enough communities that if you go to the local hardware to buy lumber or screws and nails and whatever, it's possible that the owner of that hardware store is a Rotarian. Well, does that constitute a conflict of interest? Not necessarily. It may be your only sane local choice, number one. I think one of the things that Rotary stresses is it's better to identify those issues in a Word document as part of the final record to explain that Joe Brown, owner of the Ace Hardware, supplied lumber and supplies for our project. And maybe you can say at cost or something like that. But let's just hope it's not the reverse. Let's not just hope it's 2 times retail price. Now we get into conflict of interest issue. Okay? Personal profit per gain, above and beyond normal. As a matter of fact, they go so far as to say that conflict of interest statement covers the other members of that member's family. So it's not Joe that owns the Ace Hardware, it's Joe's son-in-law. And Joe's son-in-law charged 2 times. Well, we're still in conflict of interest territory. Cooperate with all audits up to 5 years after the end of the project. So what about choosing your project? Are you satisfying a need of either the community or an organization or a family within the community? You recognize these 6 symbols? Rotary uses those internationally. You'll answer, there's a little set of checkboxes, you'll see them in DACTV in a few minutes. Without even thinking too hard about it, we have 25 grants open right now for this year. It was pretty easy to buttonhole 23 out of those 25 into one of these categories. Rotary goes so far as to tell you if you want to fill out a global grant application, I think this is the second question they ask. And if you can't identify one of these 6 areas of focus for your grant idea, you might as well stop, because you can't, they will not even allow you to fill in the rest of the blanks. Second one, assess the resources of your club and your partners. Will they be able to sustain this project after its completion? Does your club have enough money to match up with district grant money to finish the project? little more about that in a few minutes also. Some of these ideas, that first one in particular, is aimed more at global grants and big clubs, not so much in the smaller clubs. But it is a helpful idea to have a 3-person team, maybe those grant certified 3, to sort of guide the whole project. I recommend that you assign the financial side of it to one of those people. And that would entail keeping track of all the receipts and bills and quotes and everything, all the financial side of it. Maybe in conjunction with the treasurer, who may have to write some checks. Keep copies of the checks, by the way. We'll talk about a budget in a few minutes when we get into the DAC-DB. Contingency plan. What if you fill out this really nice application and submit it in April, and June comes along and all of a sudden some benefactor swoops in and supplies the project you were planning to do, and they no longer need it, or they already have it when July 1 rolls around. So what's the backup plan? Because you've got some money in your treasury right now from district grant money. Hopefully there's a backup plan as to what else, what can we do? We're going to have to give it back to the district? What are we going to do with it? What is your retention plan? How are you going to keep the records for 5 years? Who's going to control them? Have you got a fair idea that that person's going to be around in 5 years? Is there a backup plan for that? All right. Must be a new project. Means you can't just keep doing the same thing you did last year. Hopefully a different benefactor, different project. Second, we won't pay for an already completed project. I'm going to be more specific about that on the fourth one. July 1 is our startup date. No bills or receipts dated before July 1 will be accepted or acceptable. You can do all the planning you want. You can get quotes before July 1. You can be ready by July 1. But don't money into something that got finished last April or something like that. New project starts after July. It doesn't have to start on July 1, but that's the start date. Anything between, and I'm going to just basically say for our cycle, anything between July 1 start and completion by January 31 is probably the right timeline to think about. If you do that timeline, then that gives you February to fill out the final report and all the uploads that go with it, and submit the final report for our review and validation and approval. The overall timeline for us is final reports due February 28. That gives my committee, a 4-person committee, all of the month of March to review 25 reports and the 25 sort of quasi-audits that we do on them. March is our month. Then a window opens, April 1 through April 15. If you're a note taker, that may be a note that you want to take. Submit your new application between April 1 and April 15. And that only gives my committee 10 days to review those applications before we go into an approval meeting in late April. Then I have May to fill out grant requests at RI for funding. So those are the hardwired deadlines. Okay? You can plan and do quotes and things like that, sort of get your ducks in a row before July 1. But no start before July 1. Budget, wherever you can do competitive bidding, please do. Are the prices you're paying for materials reasonable, locally appropriate prices? If there are any conflicts, as we talked a bit ago, make a note of that in a Word document. And a little bit later, we will be opening up the budget spreadsheet that's available in the DACDB training folder. We'll come to that when we get on to DACDB. I'm listing 3 kinds of grants there, but the bottom one, packaged grants. There may only be 1 or 2 still open packaged grants in the world. They were long-term grants. Rotary decided we just need to do away with that phrase and that wording and make them global grants. So basically that's it. It's either district grants or global grants. If you're interested in starting a global grant, first of all, I'll tell you the dollar figures that on a global grant start at about $50,000 and go up to $500,000. And there are a couple that are even bigger than $500,000, but not typical. There are places outside of District 6510 where you can pick up ideas for what might be a nice district grant within your community. But if you're interested in global grants, some of those ideas are great. If you've ever, raise your hand if you've been to an RI convention. Because only those hands understand what the House of Friendship looks like and feels like. It is an international bazaar, not bizarre, bazaar, B-A-Z, of humanity. And all of them have ideas. And there are little 4-chair settees around. And you'll see national costumes from 3 different countries out of 4 chairs discussing what kinds of grants we could apply for or help each other on. It's a pretty amazing sight. That 4th one, matchinggrants.org/global. We'll give you some global ideas. I think they also have another section for local, smaller grants. On the Rotary website, Rotary Showcase is a section of the Rotary website. Understand what you're going to be doing with your financing. Evaluation is something that doesn't actually get turned in the final report, but it may be something just locally. As you go through the finish up of the project and the writing of the final report and the documentation and so forth, you come up with a couple of hitches that you will make, long-term notes about next year we need to do this part of it differently. Just sort of in-house evaluations. Rotary makes a big deal out of the word sustainability on global grants. As a matter of fact, one whole section of the application tree on global grants has to do with you have to train locals wherever this grant recipient is. You have to train locals. If it's wells don't last forever. Mechanical parts of wells break down. There needs to be people, not one person, people locally who can fix that well, keep it operational. Things like that. And by the way, chances are Rotary will ask you for a PDF copy of the training manual for that well. This is the training manual we use to train the locals on how to maintain their well. It's pretty specific details. All right, here we get into some specifics about how we work here. And this is not true in other districts. This is how we've decided to do this probably 15 years ago, or maybe longer, Dave. I don't know how long ago. We basically try to operate on a 2/3, 1/3 finance. That we will pick up, we the district, will offer up to 2/3 of the cost of your project, under the understanding that your club treasury can pick up the other third. So we want, how about this? We want to make sure you have skin in the game. But we're going to leverage you, in effect, 2 for 1. Now, we've learned from past experience on this third item, maximum district grant of $2,000 is not a hard and fast figure, but that's kind of what our track record has been over the past 10 years or so. When we start looking at available money and how many requests we got. So that this year, right now, the one we're finishing up, we had $50,000 available. We had 25 requests. So you can see how that $2,000 kind of fit into that schedule as far as divvying up the money. So, is your club willing to commit? Now, what's the deal here? If we're willing to give $2,000, that means we're asking you to kick in $1,000. So financially, you can kind of have a mindset here of, is there a $3,000 project that we could work on in our town? Up to $3,000. Now, if it doesn't need to be, if it's only a $2,100 project, how does that funding come out then? 1,400 and 700, right? Things like that. So sliding scale in the total amount, but pretty much max out at 3,000. Now, I will also tell you, every year when I see final reports, I will see a handful, 5 or 6 reports come in where we gave a club $2,000 and they spent $5,000 out of their own treasury on top of the $2,000. Local generosity, I don't know what else to call it. So, depends on your treasury and your opportunity. But if you want to do a $10,000 project, we can't give you $7,000. Now there is one exception to that. That is if you want to do a multi-club joint project. Because that $2,000 offer is $2,000 per club, not per project. So for an extended case there would be, suppose 3 clubs, the 3 O'Fallon clubs want to get together for a joint project. So the money on that one could look like, okay, so that opens up $6,000 of grant money on my end, as long as each of those 3 clubs is willing to kick in their $1,000. Right? So now we're looking at a $9,000 project, $6,000 from district grant money and $3,000 from the local clubs. Okay? Now, the last item on this one is the caveat of all time. I have no idea how many requests we're going to have this April. And I have no idea how much total those requests will come up with. I've been telling people who've asked me to speak to clubs that we have about $47,500 available for next year's grants. So if we got $47,500 available, and what if we get $57,000 in requests? We can't fund them all. We have to figure out how to pare down to fit that $47,000 budget kind of thing. Well, I'm using kind of round numbers, but fairly close numbers here as it stands. So we have to come up with a 4-way test idea of how to divvy up the money if we have more requests than we have money. Okay? Now in that request, or that end, how do we get district grant money from at the get-go? Well, the get-go is Rotary returns back to us money that we gave to the annual fund 3 years ago. So I basically have a 3-year budget already lined out. I know that I've got $47,500 to spend in your year. The year after that, I've only got 40,000 available to spend. Now, we're working on an annual fund campaign right now. I alluded to it this morning. We have more than enough polio money turned in this year already. And I put in a plea, if you want to donate this year yet in the next 5 months, between now and June 30th, go to the annual fund. I made a comment this morning about $100 per person in your club being the gold standard. Typically, out of 48 clubs, we will have about 21 or 22 of those clubs that hit $100 per person. A little less than half. It ranges. We also have a half dozen clubs that will be above $200 per person, and we'll have 2 or 3 clubs that will be above $300 per person by the end of the year. So we run our gamut here locally from $300 per person down to $12 per person and some $0 per person. So now we get into a 4-way test. Is it fair to all concerned that we have a $300 per person club request $2,000, and we have a $12 per person club that requests $2,000? And how do we deal with that? So we're starting to deal with some tough issues on that one. Contributions raised by Rotarians would be money that you and your Rotarians locally have sent to the annual fund. It is possible, it happens in some clubs, that some of your own members may decide, you know what, that's a good project, I'll kick in $100 locally. So they write a check to the Rotary Club, it goes in the Rotary Treasury, and then the Rotary Treasury pays out. And that becomes part of the $1,000 from the local treasury, that's fine. Interesting comment. So you want to work with a local food shelter to build something or add something. Second item on this list says, no, you can't go to that food shelter, that's up, and say, so could you give us $500 and we'll turn around and pay for the grant? That's not fair to all concerned either. And you different, or this grant, okay? During the year, during the grant year, most of the communication that refers to is you communicating with the beneficiary, so they know what's going on, they know how far along you are. If they have any requests for changes to the plan, that there's a two-way communication there. Financial management means that you're writing the checks out of the checking account of your own treasury. By the way, when we send you a check or give you a check in July, one of the things I will tell you in July is deposit it in the bank on Monday, immediately. Get it cashed, get it done in your treasury, available immediately. Don't sit and hold it until you're ready to pay the bills, okay? Get it in your treasury. Keep good financial records all the way through. Take good pictures all the way through. How closely are you following your original plan, and if it deviates, how are you going to provide an update in DAC-DB to the fact that we've changed some plans? Or if it's totally Plan B, total change of plans. Because if it's a total change of plans, I've got to notify Rotary about that. Yes, Rotary looks, if I get 25 applications and I spend April and May filling in the Rotary stuff, they've done that to me twice in 4 years now. Come back and said, that particular grant somehow isn't following our guidelines in the MOU. There's something about it. Here's what's, And I've been able, in both cases, to go back to the local club and explain and re-justify how it was gonna work. So if there's a change of plans, I need to know about it so I can notify Rotary. An evaluation process can help for future grant applications and budgets and so forth. What are the best practices for managing record keeping on the funds? What documents do you need to be retained? On a global grant, Rotary is very specific, and there's no bend on this. If you get a global grant, you will open a separate checking account, not your treasury, a separate account just for that global grant. It will be opened during the global grant. When you spend all the money in the account, you will close it, and that will be part of your final report on a global grant. During that time, keep records of how you're distributing the funds out of it. But now locally, let's back up. Locally, you know what, we're small grants here. We're not talking about a $300,000 grant. I see why Rotary wants a $300,000 grant to be self-contained in its own checking account. We're okay if you just deposit this grant check in your regular club's treasury. That's okay. Just make sure the record keeping you do is up to date. Use banks and checks and check cards. Yes, we do a lot of go to the Ace Hardware and pay for it with a credit card. And that's okay. That means that your club then is going to reimburse you, right? So I should have a double track on that on the record keeping. I should have the original Ace Hardware receipt with maybe a penned-in note purchased by so-and-so, and then another check copied paying back that cash register receipt. Okay? Ways to track that. I provide you with a spreadsheet for summarizing that record keeping. We'll show you that in a few minutes. Are there any local, again, that last one is more international than local, unless there are some local ordinances that you have to pay attention to. Documentation and retention of files identified three sources. Hard copies in a file folder that somebody has track of for 5 years. Somebody should have all scanned copies of this stuff on a hard drive. At least one hard drive. And will that person be here for the next 5 years? Will we be able to get to that hard drive? Or should it be on a thumb drive that you can put in a file box? Some way that you know you have access to the hard drive. And then third, it goes on DAC-DB. Again, I have the management spreadsheet to show you. If you need a separate bank account, you have a mechanism for transferring custody of that bank account to somebody else. When you sign the MOU, you are agreeing that you will cooperate in any kind of audits that show up, either district audits or Rotary audits. Let's talk scanners for a minute. I would assume that if you don't have, you know somebody in the club that has one of those multi-function scanners. Printer, scanner, fax, all in one. Mine, when I started, happens to come up with the scanner in PDF mode. There are a couple that I have seen. The default is JPEG, but you can do a pull-down menu and switch to PDF. Take note, for all financial records, I want PDF. Okay? Let me be a little more specific. Do not take that Ace Hardware receipt, lay it on a table, take your camera, your phone, and take a picture of it. I've gotten those. And on my screen, when I open those pictures, they're the size of a postage stamp. And I try to blow them up so I could actually read them. No, they fuzz out on you because there's not enough pixel density to be readable. No phone shots of financial records. Okay? Lay it on the scanner, make sure the scanner's in PDF, make sure all of it. This is where it's valuable to have one person responsible for financial records. That person has a separate file folder on their hard drive. And the scanned copy goes in that folder. And all scanned copies go in that same folder. You can have other people buy things, but make sure they feed the documents to that one central financial record keeper. Makes it a whole lot easier when it's time to do the final report. All right? The only people, yes, when you get into this actual application, yes. Well, I'm going to try it this way and see what happens. Thanks, Ken. Give it a couple seconds and see if it will come back. I'll let you see that. Time being. I mentioned earlier about direct or indirect. Not illegal, just make sure you report it. So have you got 2 people or 3 in training? We'll talk about submit the signed MOU because it's also available in the DAC-DB files. We'll be there in a couple minutes. Any questions on the legality side of this? If not, I'm ready to go into DAC-DB. Questions? All right, I'm going to send that away and bring up my browser. Yes, we're going to be working in DAC-DB for the next hour. And Ken, I don't know if you want to do a switch over or just let it run?
It looks good, just let's go.
All right. Are you all logged into DAC-DB? During the next 45 minutes, roughly, it may take just a little because of the network slowness issues, and maybe you won't get a chance to finish your test grant today. Maybe you're going to do it over the next 2 or 3 days, and that's okay. Your final report, final grade on grant certification is that you're going to submit a test grant to me, to the district actually, but I'll get the email. Okay? And here's how I want you to name it when we get there. And I'll say this a second time when we get there. For me, if I were submitting a test grant, the name of my project or the name of my grant would be Lebanon Lenker Test. You get that? Club, your name, test. Maybe it's Carbondale Breakfast Lacey Test. Maybe it's Flora Phillips Test. That word test is critical to me. Your name is very helpful so I know who I'm grant certifying. Okay? So more about that in a couple minutes. Here's how we get ready for this. If I'm in the new interface, So I'm going to start by going to district. And then I'm going to go to district files. Now, as the year progresses, I got to tell you that this list of file folders that you see on this screen keeps shifting around based on the most recent save. Right now, that social media is at the top of the list because I just saved Janice's file there. The second one is the one we want and the one you want to make note of. Grant application training, click. It may not always be second. And it's not alphabetical. All right? I've been talking about MOU. I may have to scroll down, but can you see Memorandum of Understanding on that list anywhere? I see it. I'm going to click on Memorandum. You should too. Click on Memorandum of Understanding. It's a PDF. I'll blow it up to full screen on my screen. There's page 1. And coming up to page 2. Legalistic. What I wanted to show you short term is page 3, which is the signatures page. Let's talk about filling in the blanks. This is something, if you want to save it now, if you've already got it up on screen, you could save it in a folder right now, or else you can do this later. Just go to Files and anytime, print it out, all 3 pages. Take the last page, fill out that blank that says Rotary Club of, fill in the blank. The undersigned agrees to comply with all of the conditions and requirements of the MOU for the Rotary year, what year? 1920, huh? 2019-20? And will notify Rotary District who? 6510 of any changes or revisions to club policies and procedures related to these requirements. When it says club president, who's that? Well, that's this year's president. Because this year's president is going to be part of the application signing. When it says club president-elect, who's that? Next year's club president, because that's the president that's going to actually execute and run the project. Now, term, the first term for this year, 18-19, term for next year, 19-20. Print the name of the club president, let the club president sign it and date it. Down below, are there any other grant certified people beyond those 2 presidents? Probably so. Okay? And hopefully one of those grant certified people is the one that has the scanner. And if not, maybe you want to try to get that person certified, or at least get them, make sure they can help you along the way. Get this thing signed. When you get it signed, put this page on the scanner, scan it as a PDF, save it. Eventually you're going to upload it into your documents folder in DACDB for your grant, and you'll also send a copy of it to me. All right? I want to minimize this right now, because we have other things to do. Way down at the bottom of the list, budget empty worksheet. See it? I don't want to open it right now. I want to show you one that's fake, that's filled in, which is way up at the top. Budget sample. Yes, go ahead and click on it near the top, budget sample. It is a Microsoft Excel file. I'm going to open it and I'm going to enable editing. Up at the top, on the real thing, I would like you to click into the first box and type in the name of your club, and on the second one, the name of the project, basically. Down here, in the yellow part, yellow to my eyes, it may be goldenrod. I have typed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items that would be expenses for this grant, and I filled them in. And at the top of my screen, it says this grant totaled out, it does that automatically for you, at $2,910. What I can't see on my screen until I scroll down far enough, very helpful to you. The total expenses are down here at the bottom also, but below that is the 2/3, 1/3 idea split. So this is suggesting that the local club better be able to spend $970, and the district grant request would be for $1,940. Okay? We're going to use these numbers, this idea, in a few minutes. Right now I'm going to minimize it. Now, also, I'm back in the files now. Grant application training. There's one for application questions, but near the top is application sample answers. Application sample answers. Click. That is a Word document. I'm going to open it and enable editing. I'm previewing to you the fact that DACDB, as you fill out the application, has 5 key questions that you need to answer. It has been my experience that sitting at the computer to answer these is tedious and not fun. This is one that I recommend you take the blank document, have your 3-person or 4-person grant team sit down and type your answers. For example, first answer, first question down here. Describe your project in 1 to 2 paragraphs. Click below it and start typing. Well, there's my first answer. Okay. Raise your hand if you're good at highlight, copy, and paste. Because if you're not, one of those people better be good at it. Okay? And this is where it gets really tedious on a phone. Better to do it on a laptop or a desktop computer where you've got better mouse control. Highlighting paragraphs even on a tablet can be a little tedious. Sometimes it's doable, but it can be a little nasty. Again, I'm going to come back to this document in a couple of minutes. Here's my thought. If you do these 2 documents in the next, say 4 or 5 weeks, if you know what your project's going to be, get these saved on that hard drive of the person who's going to be doing the filling the blanks. Then when it comes time to go to DACDB, you'll be done in 10 minutes instead of 10 hours. Okay? All right. I am going to show you the very top document from, and you may want to download this, I recommend it. It's called Application Checklist. It is another Word document, and I hate to be this much of a hand holder, but literally, check, 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 right down the line, until you get to the very end, where it says, the last signer must also click the button in the upper right that says Submit to District. Okay? When that last button is clicked, I get an email, automated, you don't have to do anything. DACDB just triggers it. So I know you've made the submission of the grant. And that means it's time for me to take a glance at it and see how things are going. But that checklist, I think, is very helpful at making sure you didn't skip something. Want to minimize that? And basically, we are now, let's say we're done with the preliminaries. We've done our Excel spreadsheet, we've done our Word document, and we're ready to rock and roll, as Ken says. So we boot into DACDB, and now this is the real deal. We are going to go to District. And we are going to find the button that says Grants. District Grants. Click. It's not in the same position on your screen, probably. At the top of the screen, it will say this on everybody. 1819, wrong year for your grant, isn't it? Key step, make a note of this somewhere. Over in the top right corner is a little button that says change org year. Click. You get a pull down. Change it to 1920. And click the bottom button that says change org year. I want to make sure everybody's caught up to me on that. All right? So now the top line says, District Grants Overview 2019-20. Everybody up to date? On the left panel is one that says Club Grant View. Now the top line, to me, because it knows, Club Lebanon Grants, 1920. Everybody caught up? And at this point, I want to do a little scan of the buttons that show up at the top of this screen. Step away here where I can see them better.
Use lost signal.
Again? Must be my magnetic personality. All right. There? All right. Maybe I better not step away. Up in the top, see if I can, in this area. Last button, far right. New club grant request. Click here to create your grant. Everybody do it.
You need the microphone.
All right, everybody. Far right button. Click here to create your grant. Before we start filling in those blanks, take a look along the top and you see 4 tabs, I call them. First one we're in is details, followed by clubs involved, followed by contacts, followed by application. In a few seconds, some more tabs are going to show up as we fill in details, but right now we'll just stay with this. All right, project name. This is where I have to put my mic down. I said mine is going to be Lebanon Linker Test. Fill in your project name, please. If you don't want to use spaces, don't use spaces. It's all right. Make sure those 3 words are there, though. Your club, your name, the word test. Okay? Leave everything else alone unless the year is wrong. Here's the last ditch chance to change the year. If it doesn't say 1920, pull down and change it. Make sure it says 1920. Down to the city.
Mine says 1919, 20.
And pull down and see if you, 1919, comma, or 1919 or 2019?
1919-20.
Wow.
That was a little while ago.
Wow. Can you get it to say 2019, comma, or 2019, 20? Janice is going to take a look.
So that's already done, she's gonna pay for that.
Yep. We're beyond the audit trail on that one. I'm going to go down here where it says city. By the way, you know, when it comes to the real grant, maybe the recipient isn't in your town formally. In the Metro East, that's a possibility. So I'm gonna, in my case though, I'm gonna say Lebanon. State, IL. And this one, be careful. It does not say county. Why does it say country?
It's an international organization.
Because we are literally an international organization. This could be in Africa someplace, or India. So USA is probably the most appropriate answer. Target completion date. Click in on it and you'll get a calendar. Well, when is this project going to start? I have to go forward in the calendar to get to July, don't I? And in July, well, I don't want to start before July 4. I'm going to just take a break on the weekend and start on Monday, July 8, although you can pick your date.
Is that the project completion date or
Is that completion date? Start date comes here. Okay, completion date, wow, okay. I'm going to give myself some leeway here.
where do you want to say?
I'm going to go to January 31, last date for completion.
Could you go beyond that date? I know you say we have a report to do in February.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes. The final report isn't final until you tell it to submit. Okay? Fair question. Remember I said the areas of focus? Well, this one is going to be mostly, it's not real well defined, but it's mostly about growing local economies for me, so I'm going to click that. And then there's this big box, open box that says project description. Oh, I remember typing that back there on that Word document. I'm going to bring up my Word document right now. There it is. And it's the other Word document. Let's try that again. Application sample answers in this case. That answer right there. With my mouse I can easily highlight. How many ways are there to do copy in a Windows environment? If you're an old pre-Windows person, you know Control-C. Or you can go up to Home and hit the copy. Control-C is probably handiest. So I'm going to do Control-C. I'm going to minimize. I'm going to click into the box, and I'm going to go Control-V to paste it. And I just answered the first question. Now, if I scroll to the very bottom of the screen, and by the way, there's a common way to know you're at the bottom. See that footer down there? Very, very bottom says last updated on 2/09/19. That's the bottom. DACDB is a little unique in terms of how you save things. Most of the submits and saves are at the very bottom of the screen, but not on DACDB. You have to go back to the top of the screen. And up here it says save. Now most of you probably don't see that LVL7 thing. That's there because I'm a district administrator as far as DACDB is concerned. But you have a save button. Click the save button once and watch the tabs. Is there a save button way up in this corner? Okay? DACDB is going to give me trouble. You know what? We may be overloading this local map. Ah, there it went. Did you get yours to save? One way you can tell is I now have two new tabs called Budget and Documents that weren't there before. Let me know you're up to date. The designers of DAC-DB did a really great job of organizing the grants module. And we are literally going to go from left to right across those tabs. And just keep marching tab by tab by tab. We are now done with the details tab. I'm going to move over to clubs involved. Guess what? It knows I belong to Lebanon. It already has Lebanon in the box. I don't have to go hunting for it. If you're going to do a multi-club grant, this is the place where you pick the other partners, the other club or clubs, highlight them, like Carbondale Breakfast, and click them over into the right side. By the way, on multi-club grants, only one of the clubs fills out this application, and that would be the host club. Okay? So Lebanon is it, and that's the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to click Save again. And I'm going to move over one more to Contacts. If you notice in the Contacts box on the left, only your club is visible. I'm going to click my name and move it over. Now, because this is a test grant, listen to this carefully. I'm only going to put my name down. In the real world, when you do the real thing, you're going to make a short list there of all the grant certified people. Right? Because they're automatically going to get notices as things happen. By the way, a little short story. 2 years ago, I had a request from one particular, I had a problem with one of the applications. So I wanted to send an email to that club. 4 people on the email list, and when I sent the email to them, 2 of the people didn't have the emails in DAC-DB. I was not a happy camper. By the way, I know of a couple of clubs that have presidents, current this year presidents, that don't have email in DAC-DB. Or one that has a block on emails. How do you become a club officer and decide you're going to block all Rotary email? Anyway, it's time to save that one. All right. By the way, typically every time you save it, it flips back to the details module, which is okay. I've done contacts. I'm now going over to the application. Here we go. That's where the start date is. Start date. Click. I'm going to take July 8, Monday. Completion date. I chose January 31. Rich is right. If you need a couple extra weeks, just don't tell me February 15th, 2025. All right, down here. If I have to send USPS mail, that's what this one's about, who do I send it to? There are 2 possibles there. If your club has what I call a club post office box or address, which my club happens to have, I'd put that one in there. But you can also put the name and address of your grants chief. Maybe it's the foundation chair, or maybe it is this the grants chief. Who should get the email, or who should get the mail? Okay? There's not a lot of chance about that, because I assume that if your club gets a grant, you're gonna show up on July 27, I think is the right date, in this room when we hand out checks. So hopefully I don't have to mail anything to you about this check. But I'm gonna fill in the blanks here. And after you're done with the city-state zip code, there's another big box blank. Describe the project objectives. Are you ready to go back to the Word document? Oh, holy cow, more answers. Okay, so we have several here. First one, describe the project objectives. Bring up the Word document. Describe the project objectives. Okay. Don't highlight the question, please. Start with the answer. Highlight the answer. Sweep it. Control C for copy. Minimize. Click in. And Control V. Down to the next blank. Humanitarian efforts. Bring up the Word document. Humanitarian efforts. Sweep. Control C. Minimize. Humanitarian efforts. Click in. Control V. Next blank. Active Rotarian involvement. Word document. Active Rotarian involvement. There it is. Highlight the answer. Control C. Minimize. Control V. And one more blank. Publicity plan. Publicity plan. Sweep. Highlight. Control C. Minimize.
If you hit Alt Tab, it'll toggle between your two windows.
Now I need to have everybody catch up to me for the next one because this blank sort of disappears. And about 1/3 of all the applications that I typically read, it has been left blank and it shouldn't have been. The blank says, if the project involves a cooperating organization, that's an understatement, please provide the name of that organization and attach a letter of participation. I call it letter of cooperation. There is no template for it. It's basically an understanding between this organization and your club that you're going to be working together on this, that they're giving you permission to work on their property. By the way, it may be not an organization. We've had grants that built wheelchair ramps for a disabled veteran. So, you need a letter of cooperation for that? Yes.
From the veteran.
From the veteran. Yeah. They're giving you permission to do it, number one, and be on their property, number two. Okay? You hate to even think about the potential, but in today's world, yes, a veteran could come back later and say, wait a minute, I didn't give you permission to do that. Well, yes, you did. We have the signed document right here. Unless you don't have the signed document. So, in this case, it's, I'm going to say Lebanon Park District. And I would ask them to write a letter of cooperation of some sort, preferably on their letterhead, signed by a director or a board member. You get a copy of it, what are you going to do with that copy? You're going to scan it, PDF, in the file, and you're going to upload it in a minute. Yep. All right, down here at the bottom of this screen are two check boxes. If you don't say yes to these, you don't get a grant. If you do say yes to these, you just indentured your first two children in terms of financial responsibilities and record-keeping financial responsibilities and so forth. I know I'm at the bottom of the screen, I'm going back to the top, and I'm going to save it. I am back at the details section, but I'm done with the application. I'm going over to budget. By the way, a little bit of a caveat. I'm scared to walk away from this thing too far. Up at the top, do you have a button here that says Club Collect Grant Signatures? Here is one of my big caveats for the day. If you punch that button too soon, you just locked down the grant. And now you're saying, oh damn, I didn't fill out the budget. And I'm going to say, oh damn, I need the budget. No, you don't have to start over. The good news is, if you notify me, I can unlock it for you. Okay? Don't get too jumpy on that Club Collect Grant Signatures. Not until you're ready, until we fill out all the tabs. Okay? Keep saving it every step of the way, but don't get too rammy. All right, typical budget. There's an income section and an expenses section. At the bottom, there's a summary. What does a balanced budget look like? Zero at the end, right? Income, $2,190. Expenses, $2,190. Balance, zero. That's a balanced budget. If it's not balanced, don't submit it. But here's where you need a couple of details also. Income items, there needs to be a minimum of two. One from district funds and one from club treasury. How do you get them in there? Well, if you look at the top, can you see where my mouse is? Add income source. Click. Enter description. Well, let's do the district grant first. Does anybody remember what that number was? I forgot. Well, let's look at my spreadsheet once and see if I can find out. The grant was $1,940. Okay, minimize, sit tight on it. So the description is going to be district grant. It's going to the Lebanon Club. The amount was 1940, right? And then underneath it, yes, click that button that says DDF. That stands for District Designated Funds, a formal Rotary term. So the district grant comes from DDF requested. Get the number right and click Add. All right? Now, that's not all though. I still have to go back and do it one more time for my own club. So I'm going to add income source again. Click. This time I'm going to say local funds. Club is Lebanon, yes. And the amount was 900, gotta look. 970, okay. 970. This one comes from other club funding. Second dot. And I want it and that. A quick question. Raise your hand if you think your club is interested in a multi-club project. Do I need to talk about this? Possible? So how do you get the other club involved? If you remember when I did add income source, The club said Lebanon. That's a pull down. So you can pull that down and choose the other club for the second club funding. That's possible. Yeah, I can't do it on this grant, but that would be possible. All right, income is done. Expenses. I'm going to have to add expenses. I think that was 5 times. All right, look at my spreadsheet. You know what? My spreadsheet is narrow enough that I can probably just kind of like leave it there. We'll see. First, okay, that explains part of it. Let me just try it this way. There. I can keep it on the screen now, side by side. Description, training expenses. The amount, $750. And add it. Another expense. Second one, paper reams. And the amount, $150. Added. Third expense, add stamps. Amount, $200. Today, I think that'd have to be $210, wouldn't it? Because they're no longer 50 cents a stamp. There it came up. Fourth item, business cards. Amount, $1,000. And finally, my sense of humor shows up. Be sure to use this data. Amount, $810. And now I get a chance to see if my budget is balanced. Bottom line, down here, total income, 2910, expense items, 2910, balance, 0. Make sure that's true. By the way, what if I blew it on one of my expenses? I typed the wrong number, stupid me. Do you see that little pencil along the front edge, way over there? That pencil is an editor. You click the pencil, by the way, don't click the crosshairs. That deletes it from the whole list, unless you want to delete it. But if you click the pencil, that one comes back up on screen and lets you fix it. Okay? Pencils throughout this whole system are how you edit and fix things. All right, so my budget is balanced, it's up to date. I can go to the top and I can click Save. Now, that was budget. There's still one more tab. It's called Documents. Should we have any documents? Well, we've talked about 2 already today. The MOU signature page. And a fair question, Rick. I really don't need the entire MOU to be scanned. The signature page is the one I really want in here. Okay? So, how do you do that? By the way, you see that it automatically created a backup folder. You don't have to mess with that at all. It'll take care of itself. Here's Documents folder. That's probably where we need to be. And the third one is Images. I wonder what goes there. when you get a bunch of pictures, you're gonna put the pictures in the images folder. Documents. Open it up and there are 0 files in it, but there is a button up there that says upload a file. Click. And it gives you a chance. This is technicality. I think they could streamline this a little bit better, honestly. I'm not sure why they make me hit the browse button again, but I have to. And it takes me into my hard drive, and I can go to any folder I want. It just happens to remember that earlier today, I took that Word document right there, so I'll just use it as an example. But maybe it's the MOU scan. Click on it, open. Doesn't really open it, it just puts it in the upload folder. Are you replacing an existing file? 98% of the time the answer will be no. But maybe once in a while you mess something up and you do want to replace an existing file, and then you can use that option. But basically, notice it shows the name here of the document. It's there, so I can go ahead and upload it. And it's a fairly lengthy document in this case, so it may take a minute to work on that over this network. There it is. What's the other document that should be in here right now? That letter of cooperation should be in here. So those 2 documents should be part of your original application. Is it possible that you might need 2 letters of cooperation? Yeah. What if you and the Lions Club jointly work on this wheelchair project? Then you and the Lions Club need a letter of cooperation, and you and the homeowner need a letter of cooperation. So yeah, just common sense here as to what the letter of cooperation should be. All right, so now, save the documents. I'm going to minimize my budget spreadsheet. So now I've saved everything, and I'm done with tabs. I think I'm done. I think the application's ready to, not ready to submit. Ready to get your club's signatures. So when you click that collect club signatures, they build in this little heart stop. If you're a techie, it says take a breath, think about it, do you really mean this? Is this legit? Are you sure you're done? Think about it. You got all your budget right, everything blah blah blah, everything okay? If you say yes, click the OK button. And in about 30 seconds, my email will show up with a notification that it's time for me to go in and read this thing and verify the details. And then there's a new button up there. It doesn't say collect club signatures, it actually says sign it, doesn't it? That second one down. There. Club sign grant application. Nice little update here. You get a list of people who have already signed it before you. Right now it's empty. Now for the purposes of grant training, I was the only one that got the email, so I'm the only one that can sign it. Question, I'm going to go ahead and sign it. Why does it not say submit to district? It still says club sign grant application. It's waiting on at least one other signature. Which begs the question, why does it need 2 signatures? Accountability in what respect? Well, I don't think this could happen in today's era, but I could turn right around and say in today's era, anything can happen. Is it possible that your Rotary Club might have one bullheaded person who thinks they could ramrod through a grant project single-handedly without telling anybody else about it? This two signatures thing takes that off the table, doesn't it? At least two people in your club need to validate and verify that this is legit. Okay? So that contact list way back in this section of the application, make sure that contact list is the right list. Because they're the people that are going to get that email. And they're the people that are qualified, certified to sign it. And by the way, just signing it, let's try this in the old-fashioned paper days. Suppose there is no internet, there is no DAC-DB, somebody typed all this, God help us if you wrote it out longhand. But somebody typed up the answers to all of those sheets, and you got a 10-page application on paper, and you have to get in your car and chase down the two people that are going to sign it. And you got the second one signed. But I don't know about it yet. How will I know about it? Not until you get back in your car and you drive to my house and you hand me the sheet of paper, the 10 sheets. The electronic version of that is click to submit to district. Now, Ken, I'm not the rapper, but I got a 4-line mantra here. Club collects signatures, sign it, submit. Everybody? Club collects, start over. Club collects signatures, sign it, submit. You may want to write that 4-step process down somewhere. Because until you click submit, it ain't official. Okay? That is the bottom line. So now, make sure you understand an expectation I have. I expect that over the next few days, I'm going to get a whole rash of emails in my inbox that said, Rich Lunan submitted a district grant application. Or, no, actually it won't say Rich Lunan. It'll say O'Fallon Rotary. And it may have the name, but... So, if I don't get one of those from you, you're not grant certified. Make sure you heard that. If I don't get one of these test grants from you, you're not certified until I sign off on it. Okay? So if you didn't do it today, do it in the next few days. And I will keep updating my grant certified list by club. And by the way, when I get at least 2 signatories that are grant certified, then I check off the club that the club is grant certified. Okay? Some of the behind the scenes work that I do that really nobody else sees. Any questions? I'm 20 minutes early. That's because of copy and paste.
Thank you, Lenny.